welcome back to the Abarth Chris YouTube channel. So, like I said earlier this week, I'm doing a couple videos, 5 things I hate about the Abarth and 5 things I love about the Abarth. Today we're going to get it firing off with 5 things I hate about the Abarth. So, let's start cruising around and I'll tell you those 5 things. But first, fire up. Alright guys, so thing number 1 that I hate about the Abarth would have to be some of the cheap plasticky stuff in the interior. Like these little door handles, I mean, what's the whole lack of nothing going on the doors, and kind of the whole center head unit area, and even like that loose plastic underneath the steering wheel. There's just a bunch of kind of like cheap plasticky parts in the interior. And I honestly think Fiat could have done a lot better job with it. I get it's an economy car and it's just the fast version of an economy car, but while you're doing those extra suspension, steering rack, engine stuff, you could definitely, you know, put a decent head unit in here. Or, I don't know, maybe switch out a couple of the plastic parts or something that doesn't at least look and feel so cheap. Yeah, so that would be my number 1, is some of the cheap parts in the interior definitely could be replaced. So thing number 2 that I hate about the Abarth is they kind of make this thing seem like it's going to handle a little better than it does. It handles good when you get it, but not nearly as good as it's hyped up to be. There's still a lot of body roll. The back is very unpredictable. Once you start modding it and, you know, doing those suspension and chassis upgrades, then it definitely becomes a lot more manageable and it starts to... Sorry, I had to hit some boost, scrape a little tire, but man, now I forgot what I was saying. But we were talking about, oh yeah, the handling. So, I mean, you know, with chassis braces and a rear sway bar and coilovers, it does better. It still needs... I still think it needs an upper strut bar in the front, and I still need that lower strut bar to really lock it down, and then maybe something in the back too to kind of tie the unibody all in. But I just think they could have done a much better job with the handling of this car from the factory. They could have also kept it a little bit lower. I mean, it comes like, it literally looks like it has a lift kit on it when on these stock cars. So they could have done, I think they could have done a couple things better from the factory to make this thing handle a little better right off the bat. So thing number 3 that I hate about the Abarth also actually has to do with the handling, and I think this probably ties into number 2, but the fact that our rear end is one solid axle holding both wheels instead of 2 control arms. So they're not fully independent of each other. It handles almost like a rock crawler in the sense that that your wheels can't move independently. So if this one comes up, then because the axles are tied together, it's going to create movement in the other wheel, and that's why when you drive these things on their limit, the inside rear wheel lifts so much. I think our car would stay a lot more planted and would handle a lot less fuss, essentially, if it had those rear control arms and was able to keep itself more planted in the rear. But essentially everything's up on the front and the rear is just dragging behind it, and barely dragging at that because there's almost no way to hold it down. So it's definitely, oh, what an asshole, it turns right in front of me. But yeah, so number 3 would definitely be the lack of control arms in the rear, and doing that one solid axle. I think it takes away from the handling of the car. And like I said, it is an economy car that's souped up, whatever, but I don't know, I mean, I still think they could have easily put control arms in instead of a solid axle, because there's a whole lot of nothing going on back there, so there has to be room. And I know, I mean, gas tank and all that's back there, but it could still happen. I've gone underneath there's plenty of room. You know, it's just, I guess, to each their own, and Fiat didn't want to, so we all kind of got screwed on that. Number 4, the 4th thing I hate about the Abarth is honestly the gear ratio. And I heard that the 6-speed autos don't have this problem, but clearly us 5-speed, I mean, cruising at 70 miles an hour, the car's at 3,000 RPMs, which is way too high for cruising speed. Should be at about 2K RPMs. That's definitely a much more manageable cruising RPM, and that's what most cars would be at, somewhere in that 2 to 2.5 range. But I feel like that's another reason why cars eat so much oil, is because they're just revving so high. The gear ratio is way too short. First gear could be taller. Same thing with second, third, and fourth, respectively. And then so scratch the whole thing. What they should have done is put a 6-speed trans in this car, but that's beside the point. We got a 5-speed, and they geared it too short. So we end up, I feel that over 80 miles an hour, they're still pull, don't get me wrong, I've had this thing pull upwards of about 120 to 125 miles an hour, but it just doesn't feel like it has as much get up and go as it should on the top end, especially once you start modifying it. The gear ratio just really, I feel like it limits the car, limits its capabilities, and this isn't some big horsepower highway pull 60 run car, but it's still nice to be able to downshift and keep up with some people, and it can, but it could be so much better if it had an extra gear or a taller gear ratio, so I wouldn't be tapping out 5th gear quite as fast. Alright, so the 5th thing that I hate about this car, which also ties kind of into number 2 and 3, is the weight distribution. The weight distribution on these things are very poor. Fiat didn't really do too much to try and balance it out and get it close to 50-50. They just kind of said screw it, and there's a lot of weight up front and really nothing going on in the back. There's a few little things I think that could have been done, like moving the battery to the rear and maybe placing things differently within the car that could have helped balance the weight a little bit better. But at the end of the day, really our front wheels really are all that matter. The rear wheels just dragging behind, so as long as those front wheels have traction. But that also goes back to, with all that weight up there and all the power going on those wheels and all the braking and all the turning going all to the front wheels, that's a lot of stress up there. And I don't know about you guys, but it makes me feel not bad for the car, but mechanical sympathy for sure, as far as how much those little axles and rods and all the steering components and all the braking components are doing up there. They're under a lot of stress, and especially if you have a car that runs phase 2, or even even phase 0, phase 695 and phase 1 all put down some serious power. I've seen upwards of 250 foot-pounds of torque in phase 0. So that's a phase 0 pull. So it's definitely something that could have been better, and I think would have made the car a lot more predictable. Also would have helped with the whole rear end sliding around, like I said, and it could have made the car that much better than it is. Handling is really like the key to this car, essentially, is its nimble, its quickness. It's not the fastest car out there, and it really never will be. So you got to use the things like the weight to its advantage and be able to kind of zip through those corners real quick. But with the weight distribution so poor, it makes it a little more difficult to kind of keep grounded and keep level coming around the corner, and keep the most amount of traction possible. But like I said, it's doable, and with a couple modifications, you can kind of fix all of that. My pops and bangs is so rowdy sometimes. Alright guys, so there you have it, my list of 5 things that I hate about the Abarths. And would those 5 things stop me from buying an Abarth again? Probably not. At the end of the day, they're pretty minuscule, and it really doesn't take away from any of the fun that you have driving this car. Alright guys, well, those were the 5 things that I hate about the Abarth. So thank you guys again for watching the Abarth Chris YouTube channel. Stay tuned for the 5 things that I love about the Abarth, plus probably a few more coming up in the beginning of this next week. But for now, keep giving another bears, guys, and thanks again for watching.